Hi, I'm Kyler. I'm the mechanic here at Poly Performance, and today we're going to be installing these alignment cam lockout plates from Zone Offroad. This tab is going to basically pay for itself in one off-roading trip. It just is able to lock in the alignment using these holes that locate on the factory pin. You're not going to be able to just, shear that pin off and lose your alignment specs. Before you put this on, you're gonna wanna, for sure, go take your vehicle and get it aligned. And that way you can start off with a fresh, solid alignment specs. This is where it'd be nice to have a third arm. Fuck, that's a lot of Moab dust. Real clean. I'm in danger now.
I'm in danger!
Oh God. So before you install these, you're gonna wanna take the new Zone cams and you're gonna hold it up here and get the bolt head centered in the hole, and you're gonna want to line up which two holes on the actual cam tab line up with these two pins, and we're gonna go ahead and mark the two holes that we're going to end up using. So before you go moving to the back one, you're just gonna go ahead and take one of the back cams, which you'll notice the hole is smaller on the rear cam, and you're going to go ahead and transfer those same holes that you marked to the rear one, so that way that's already marked for you when you go to put that on, and they're both in the same position. All right, we're going to be installing the front set of cams first. So you're going to need to remove the lower control arm bolt right here. You're going to want to do these bolts one at a time. So you're only going to want to take out one of the lower control arm bolts at a time, so that this whole lower control arm doesn't move around on you and make it really hard to get the bolt back in. So you're going to use a 21 millimeter on the front of the bolt just to hold it. And then you're going to use a 24 millimeter socket. And you're going to want a pretty long ratchet or wrench to be able to break this loose, because usually they're pretty tight. All right, next you're going to go ahead and just remove the rear factory cam and discard it. And now you're going to go ahead and just tap the lower control arm bolt out. And it may kind of need to be wiggled around a little bit to come out, just like that. Next, you're going to need to go take off this factory cam, which is pressed on a knurled step right here. So basically, to get this front cam off of the bolt, you're going to need to press it off, because it is pressed on a knurled step. So you're going to want to find a piece of tubing, a socket, whatever you can find that just fits around the bolt head. That way you can take this over and put it in the press and push it out. You could also use a regular sledgehammer to do that, but you run the risk of mushrooming the threads right here on the bolt. You could clean it up after you hit it out with a hammer. So people that don't have a press, you can get it out with a hammer. So we're gonna go ahead and press that out. So as you can see, the old cam is actually pressed on this knurled surface here. You do not need that cam anymore, and we're gonna just keep the bolt and use it for the installation of the new cams. So now we're ready to install the factory lower control arm bolt into the new Zone cam. We're gonna just slide that in there. It's actually, it should fit just on there. If it does not slide all the way down, it's okay. It will just pull itself on there once you tighten this. You're gonna have to take a pry bar and pry up on the lower control arm, or just move it around basically until you get it to line up so you can get the bolt through. We're just gonna go ahead and line it up close to where we want it, and you're gonna slowly let that loose. So now that we are at this point here, we're going to go ahead and just get this bolt all the way back in. As you can see, we have the cam lined up where we want it on the pins. And you're just gonna go ahead and use something to pry and hold up the lower control arm, and just go ahead and tap this bolt back in, just like so. As you can see, the pins are aligned through the hole, and we have the bolt in the place just about where it was with the factory cams. Next, we're gonna take the rear cam that we have already marked to match the front, and you're just gonna go back here and slide that on. And you might need to pry on the arm a little bit just to get it to line up. So just get the rear cam popped onto those pins. You're gonna take your factory lower control arm nut and go ahead and thread that back on. You're gonna just go ahead and snug that right back up, nice and tight, and then we'll torque it to spec once we're all finished. Now we're gonna go ahead and move to the rear lower control arm bolt. And before we do that one, we're gonna have to remove this sway bar system, which there's two different styles on Broncos, but this is gonna be the hardest one to remove, and we'll show you how to do that here. Remove the two bolts that hold the sway bar brackets on each side. Be careful, as one is a stud with a nut and the other is a bolt. You're going to carefully hold the sway bar as you take the bolts out of the brackets, and have a bungee cord ready as you drop the sway bar down so that you can strap the sway bar assembly out of the way. Next, we are gonna mark the cam just as we did on the front, and make note of which holes on the cam we're gonna use. Once you have the cam marked, you're gonna go ahead and use the same procedure that we used on the front cams and mark the opposing cam to match. Now go ahead and grab your wrench and ratchet and remove the lower control arm bolt. You may need to use a dead blow hammer to knock the lower control arm bolt out. Now you're going to head over to the press and press the cam off just the same way as you did the front. You may need to use a pry bar to move the lower control arm around while you put the lower control arm bolt back in. You can use a dead blow hammer to easily tap the lower control arm bolt back in. Be sure to line up the pins on the chassis with the marks you made on the alignment cam before you tap it in. Next, install the nut back onto the factory lower control arm bolt and tighten it back down. Repeat the same process on the driver's side. Next, you're going to reinstall the sway bar system. Go ahead and put the factory bolts back into the brackets, and you may want to use some sort of Loctite if you prefer to do so on the stud when replacing it. Next, you're going to reinstall the factory front skid plate. Last but not least, reinstall the wheels and tires.